Hello and welcome to my garden. In today's video, I thought I would show you, with fall just around the corner, how to plant some herbs. Herbs are a really great thing to have all season round. It's one of my favorite things to plant, and it's one of the easiest things to plant. So today I'm going to show you how to direct sow some seeds directly in some small pots. These pots are great for being able to bring indoors and sit directly on your windowsill to be able to have some fresh herbs all season long into the fall and even into the winter. So the three seeds we're going to plant today are basil, parsley, and oregano. These are some of my favorite herbs. They smell so lovely and they make every dish just taste that much better. Fresh herbs just make every dish taste that much better. So I'm going to show you how I direct seed these right into these pots. You can see in these pots here that I planted some time ago some basil. I've got some growing in pots just like we're going to plant in today. These were actually transferred. These were clippings that I took from plants in my garden and transferred into these small pots. And in this 1 gallon grow bag here, I have direct seeded a ton of basil in here, and it's growing perfectly. Very lush, very green, and it smells amazing right here in this 1 gallon grow bag. So if you want to be able to plant a little bit more basil to have a larger harvest, you can plant in larger bags. You can also even direct sow or plant basil right into your garden beds as well. Growing in this 15 gallon grow bag here, I've got some basil planted with some marigolds, a tiny tim tomato, and some cucumbers climbing up this trellis I built in the back of the grow bag. So you can get these grow bags in many different sizes, even up to 20, 30, 50 gallons, 100 gallons even. They're perfect if you don't have space, or if you don't have a space for an in-ground garden, if you don't have space because your gardens are so full. Grow bags are a great way of growing plants. They're fabric, so they're perfect for the root systems of the plants. They're not going to get root bound. That creates more airflow. They're breathable. There's better water drainage. There's a lot of benefits to planting in grow bags. You can see I have a ton of them with different plants. I've got some squash, some beans, all growing in grow bags. And then you can see I've also got some basil growing in this garden bed here. This is a raised garden, 2 4x3 foot raised gardens built side by side. And I've got some basil growing in here with some tomato plants and some squash and some beans. Basil is perfect to plant with or near tomato plants. They pair perfectly together, and the basil actually helps to repel some bugs. So I try to plant basil in my gardens near my tomatoes if possible. So it's actually quite simple to direct sow your seeds into whatever container you plan on growing in. If you have any big pieces in your soil, you just want to pull those out. What I did to fill these pots is I dampened the soil first before filling the pots. You want to make sure you use moist soil when you're planting seeds. It's going to help them germinate a little bit quicker. You don't want to use dry soil, nor do you want your soil in your pots to dry out during germination. You want to make sure to keep your plants nice and moist. When you're planting seeds, especially in containers like this, whatever container you're using, you want to make sure that the bottoms have holes in them. You want to make sure that the water can drain through properly. You don't want to waterlog your roots when your plants start growing. So it's important that there's some sort of drainage in the container that you're using. It's another reason why I like these grow bags so much, because the water just drains right through the fabric, so your roots will never get waterlogged. So I'm using this 5 gallon grow bag to pre-moisten my soil, which I've already done. You want to make sure your soil is a nice consistency for planting the seeds. You want to make sure that the water isn't seeping through when you squeeze it, but it kind of stays together when you squeeze it together. So it's nice and crumbly, it's moist. We'll be able to water in our seeds after as well when we're done planting. You just want to take your container and fill it, and you want to kind of pack down the soil when you're planting the seeds. You want to make sure that the soil is not too loose in your container, whatever container you're using, or grow bag. You want to make sure there's no air pockets. So I just packed it down and filled it to the top. So to plant the seeds in these pots, I'm going to start with the basil. And you can really choose how you want to plant these. You can plant just a couple of seeds per pot, or if you want a lot of basil, you can definitely overseed these pots. You can always transfer some out later if it gets too full and split up your pots into more plants. So these seeds are quite small, little black seeds. This is the basil. And I'm going to plant these pots pretty thickly, so I'm going to overseed a little bit. I'm just going to take a few in my hand and sprinkle them in. You can always thin this out later, or you can pull them and separate them and make many more plants. So I just sprinkled them in, and I'll do the same in a couple more of these pots. And we'll do one more. Lightly sprinkle them in on top. It's a little windy. So now you want to just press in those seeds a little bit. Because they're so small, you don't want them very deep in the soil because they need a little bit of light to germinate. And then you can take a little bit more moist soil that you pre-moistened and just sprinkle it on top to make sure that the seeds are covered lightly at the top. These seeds will probably germinate in about 5 to 7 days. And our basil is planted. Next, we're going to do some parsley. These herbs are all really great for the cool weather we have coming up. The basil, the oregano, and the parsley. And we're going to plant the parsley in these 4 pots right here. Again, we're going to overseed a little bit. We're dealing with really small seeds, and you can split them up later. These are lighter and brown, different size, but still very small compared to the basil seeds. You can split them up later, or you can thin them out. So we're just going to sprinkle these on top. This is the parsley. Parsley is such an amazing herb. You can use little tags to know which pots are which, especially when you're doing a lot of planting at once. But one thing that's great about herbs is that they're quite distinct in how they look and smell. So you don't have to worry too much about the herbs. I like nice full pots. Tell me in the comments, what is your favorite herb to grow? I would love to know. So we're just going to press these seeds down like we did with the basil, and then sprinkle a little bit of extra soil on top to make sure they're lightly covered. But because the seeds are so small, you don't want them buried very deep in the soil because you want to make sure that they'll germinate. They need the light to germinate. So we're just going to sprinkle the soil right on top. Make sure the seeds are all covered. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty, guys, but you can definitely wear gardening gloves if you want to. I find when working with seeds, it's a lot easier to just use my hands. But definitely when I'm out in the garden, I'm using my gloves. I mean, some of these plants can get pretty prickly. Not the herbs, but like the squash plants, cucumber plants, the vines can be pretty prickly. So we've got one more to go. We're going to plant some oregano in these 3 pots right here. Oregano is another really great herb. Great for the cool weather. Now, oregano seeds are tiny. They're these tiny little round red seeds. So we're going to overseed these pots. And you definitely want to keep these on top to make sure that these seeds will germinate. We're going to overseed. You can barely see them. And all we're going to do with these seeds is just press them lightly into the soil with a very thin layer of moist soil on top. So we've sprinkled them in. You want to make sure that you're using a really light soil for starting seeds, like a potting soil or a seed starting soil. You want to make sure that it's not too heavy. You definitely don't want to use soil right from your in-ground garden. It is just way too heavy and it won't have the nutrients that the seeds need to germinate. Sprinkle very lightly and tap them in. And there we have it. Our herbs are planted and these should sprout in 5 to 7, maybe 10 days. So once you've got your seeds planted, you just want to take a bottle and spritz the top with some water and make sure the top stays nice and moist while the seeds are germinating. Once your seeds start germinating, you don't want to water from the top, or you want to try not to water from the top because you could just create mold or bacteria. So what I like to do is put my pots and containers in some sort of tray and fill the tray with water and let the containers soak up the water from the bottom. Because they have the holes on the bottom of the containers, it makes it really easy for the trays with all the plants and seeds to soak up that water from the bottom so that you're not creating bacteria on the leaves and the new seed starts when they start sprouting. You also want to make sure to not keep your trays sitting in water. So once the tops of your trays are more of a light brown and you can see that they're starting getting dry, the other way to tell if your trays need water is how light or heavy your trays are. When your trays are super light, it's also an indication that they need more water. So you'll want to fill your tray with the water, let your seedlings, your trays soak up that water. When the tops of your trays turn to a darker brown, you know that they've gotten enough water, all the water that they need, and then you can pour out or drain the leftover water. You definitely don't want your trays sitting in water all the time. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, and share this video if you found it helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.